The rain pounded against the windows of Martin Wheeler's corner office on the 32nd floor of Sentinel Tower. From there, he usually enjoyed an impressive view of downtown Boston. But tonight the city lights were just blurry smudges through the water streaming down the glass. His eyes weren't on the view anyway. They were fixed on the quarterly report in front of him. "Damn it," he muttered, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. The numbers weren't adding up the way he needed them to. After 20 years of building Wheeler Financial from the ground up, he was facing the most challenging quarter in the company's history. The board meeting tomorrow would be brutal. Thunder crashed outside, making him flinch. The weather report had mentioned a severe storm, but this was turning into something else entirely. His phone buzzed with an emergency alert, flash flood warning in effect. Shelter in place advised. Martin sighed and checked his watch. 9:45 p.m. The office was empty except for him. Even Diane, his ever-reliable assistant, had left hours ago, urging him to do the same. "You should go home, Mr. Wheeler. Your family's waiting," she'd said with that knowing look she'd perfected over 15 years of working together. Family. The word made something twist in his chest. Rachel had stopped waiting for him years ago. His wife had grown accustomed to having dinner alone, to attending their daughter Emma's school events by herself, to sleeping before he got home. And Emma, God, she was already 17. When had that happened? When had he missed so much? The building's emergency system suddenly activated, a calm, automated voice announcing, "Due to severe weather conditions, all exits have been temporarily sealed for safety. Building occupants are advised to remain in place until the storm passes. Estimated lockdown duration, 3 hours." "Perfect," Martin said to the empty room. "Just perfect." He was about to pour himself a drink from the cabinet behind his desk when his phone rang. Rachel's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," he answered, trying to sound more energetic than he felt. "Are you still at the office?" Her voice was tight, controlled in that way he'd come to recognize over the past few years. "Yeah, got caught in the lockdown. The building's automated system, Emma's in the hospital." The world stopped. "What? What happened?" "Car accident." She was driving back from Leah's house when she hydroplaned on Worcester Street. Rachel's voice cracked slightly. "She's okay, Martin. Bruised ribs, mild concussion, but she's okay. They're keeping her overnight for observation." Martin's throat constricted. "I'll be there as soon as—" "You can't," Rachel cut in. "You just said the building's locked down. I'll find a way out." "Don't be ridiculous, Martin. The roads are flooded anyway." She sighed, and he could picture her rubbing her forehead the way she did when frustrated. "This isn't about you getting here now. It's about you never being here at all." The accusation hung in the air between them, heavy as the storm clouds outside. "That's not fair," he said finally. "Isn't it? Emma asked for you, you know. First thing when she regained consciousness. Asked if her dad was coming." Rachel's voice hardened. "I lied. Told her you were on your way. Because that's what a father should do when his daughter is hurt. He shows up." Martin gripped the phone tighter. "Rachel, you know how important tomorrow's board meeting is. The company's future. Spare me, Martin. It's always about the company. Always some crisis, some meeting, some client that needs your attention more than we do." "That's not 25 years. Rachel continued as if he hadn't spoken. 25 years of marriage, and I've spent the last 15 raising our daughter essentially on my own while you built your empire. And for what? So you could have the biggest office? So strangers could admire Martin Wheeler, the financial wizard." "I did it for us," Martin insisted. "For our future, for Emma's. Emma doesn't need a college fund or a trust, Martin. She needs a father. One who knows what's going on in her life, who shows up to her swim meets, who doesn't need to be reminded of her birthday." The accusation stung because it was true. He'd missed Emma's last 3 swim meets. And yes, he'd forgotten her birthday last month until Diane had placed a wrapped gift on his desk with a note reminding him to call his daughter. "I'm trying, Rachel." "No, you're not." Her voice was quiet now, defeated in a way that frightened him more than her anger. "You're going through the motions. You've been going through the motions with us for years." Lightning flashed outside, briefly illuminating the framed photo on his desk. Rachel, Emma, and him on a beach in Cape Cod 7 years ago. Emma was 10 then, gap-toothed and sunburned, building a sandcastle while Rachel looked on, laughing. He couldn't remember who had taken the picture. He couldn't remember the last time they'd gone on a family vacation. "I want a divorce, Martin." The words hit him like a physical blow. "What?" "Rachel, you can't." I've already spoken to a lawyer. I was going to wait until after Emma's graduation next month, but after tonight, I can't do this anymore. We can't do this anymore. Martin sank into his chair, the quarterly report forgotten. Please, let's talk about this. When I get home. That's just it, Martin. This hasn't been your home for a long time. It's just the place where you sometimes sleep. He heard her take a deep breath. I'll be staying at the hospital with Emma tonight. You should use the time to think about what you really want from life, because from where I'm standing, it isn't us. The call ended, leaving Martin staring at his darkened phone screen, the rain still beating against the windows like it was trying to break through. 3 hours until the building would unlock. 3 hours to figure out how his life had just fallen apart. The hospital corridor seemed to stretch endlessly as Martin made his way toward room 317. He'd been there since dawn, having driven straight from his office the moment the building unlocked. His shirt was rumpled, his eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night spent poring over family photo albums he'd pulled from the storage closet in his office. Albums he'd forgotten, he'd even kept there. He paused outside Emma's room, steeling himself. Through the half-open door, he could see Rachel sitting in a chair beside the bed, her head bent over a book. Emma was asleep, her face pale except for an angry bruise blooming across her right cheekbone, and 4 lines snaked from her arm, and monitors beeped softly beside her. Martin's chest tightened. His little girl. Only she wasn't little anymore. The young woman in that hospital bed was a stranger to him in many ways. What was her favorite band now? Did she still love strawberry ice cream? Was she still set on studying marine biology? Or had that changed too? He knocked softly on the door frame. Rachel looked up, her expression immediately closing off when she saw him. You made it, she said flatly. Of course I did. Martin stepped into the room, his eyes never leaving Emma's face. How is she? Better. Doctor says she can probably go home this afternoon. Rachel marked her place in her book and set it aside. She woke up about an hour ago, asked for water, then fell back asleep. Martin nodded, taking the seat on the opposite side of the bed. The silence between them was deafening, broken only by the steady beep of the heart monitor. Did you mean what you said last night? He finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. About the divorce? Rachel looked at him for a long moment, her brown eyes, once so warm when they looked at him, now weary and resolved. Yes. Martin swallowed hard. Just like that? 25 years, and we're done. It hasn't been just like that, Martin, and you know it. Rachel's voice remained quiet, but gained an edge. This has been coming for years. The only surprise is that I waited this long. We can fix this, Martin insisted, leaning forward. Couples therapy, a vacation, whatever it takes. I'll cut back at work. Rachel gave him a sad smile. You've been saying that since Emma was in elementary school. Remember when you missed her 5th grade play? You promised you'd make the next one. Then you missed her middle school graduation, and it was the same promise. The pattern never changes, Martin. This time is different. I see that now. Do you? Or is this just the panic talking? Rachel reached into her purse and pulled out a small envelope. I was going to give this to our lawyers, but maybe you should see it now. Martin took the envelope with a sense of dread. Inside was a photograph. Emma at her swim meet 3 months ago, standing on the podium with a gold medal. Rachel was beside her, both of them beaming at the camera. The second item was a printout of a text conversation between Rachel and him from that same day. Rachel, Emma just won gold in the 200-meter freestyle. Wish you could have seen it. Martin, great. In meetings all day? Tell her congrats from me. He remembered that day now. He hadn't been in meetings. He'd been having lunch with investors at the Capitol Grill, a lunch that could have been rescheduled. There are hundreds of moments like this, Martin, Rachel said softly. Birthdays, school events, family dinners. All the small moments that make up a life together. And you weren't there for them. I can change, Martin said, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. Maybe, but not for us. Rachel nodded toward Emma. Maybe for her, though. That's what I'm hoping. Emma stirred then, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment, she looked confused. Then her gaze focused on Martin. Dad, her voice was groggy. You came. Martin moved closer, taking her hand gently in his. Of course I did, sweetheart. Emma gave him a weak smile, then winced as the movement pulled at her bruised face. Mom said you would, but I wasn't sure. The simple honesty of her words was like a knife to his heart. His own daughter hadn't believed he would come to her in the hospital. What kind of father had he become? I'm here now, he said, squeezing her hand. And I'm not going anywhere. Emma's eyes drifted toward the window. Did you have to miss your big meeting? Martin blinked, surprised she even knew about it. That doesn't matter. But you said it was super important, that the whole company depended on it. Martin glanced at Rachel, who was watching them with a carefully neutral expression. Nothing is more important than you, Emma. A nurse entered then, checking Emma's vitals and adjusting her for. Looking good, she said cheerfully. Doctor will be by soon to see about getting you discharged. After she left, Emma struggled to sit up. Rachel moved to help her, adjusting the pillows behind her back. So what happens now? Emma asked, looking between her parents. The question seemed to encompass more than just her hospital stay. Rachel and Martin exchanged glances. Now, Martin said, we focus on getting you better. And then, he trailed off, unsure how to continue. And then we'll talk as a family, Rachel finished for him. There are some changes coming, Emma. The divorce, you mean? Emma's directness startled them both. I've known you guys were heading there for a while. It's fine. Most of my friends' parents are divorced anyway. Martin felt another piece of his heart crumble. How long had his daughter been preparing herself for the inevitable breakdown of her family? And how had he missed the signs that she knew? It's not fine, he said firmly. None of this is fine. But your mother's right. We do need to talk. All of us. And I promise you, Emma, whatever happens between your mom and me, nothing will change how much we both love you. Emma gave him a look that was far too knowing for a 17-year-old. Will I still see you? After, I mean. Of course you will, Martin said quickly, perhaps too quickly. When? Emma pressed. On scheduled weekends? Will I have to text your assistant to make an appointment? Her words cut deep because they weren't entirely unfair. There had been times, too many times, when Emma had had to go through Diane to reach him. I'm going to do better, Martin promised. Starting now. Emma studied him for a long moment, then nodded slightly. Okay. That simple word, with all its cautious hope, felt like both absolution and challenge. The week after Emma's accident passed in a blur for Martin. He'd delegated the board meeting to his CFO, taken a leave of absence for the first time in his career, and moved into the guest bedroom of their Beacon Hill brownstone. It was a temporary arrangement. Rachel had made that clear, but she'd agreed to let him stay until they sorted things out for Emma's sake. This morning, he sat at the kitchen island, nursing a cup of coffee and staring at the stack of papers Rachel had left for him. Divorce paperwork, neatly organized in a blue folder with yellow sticky notes marking where he needed to sign. She'd always been organized like that, even in dismantling their marriage. Martin heard footsteps on the stairs and looked up to see Emma, her bruise now faded to a yellowish smudge. She wore her Riverside Prep swimming team hoodie and pajama bottoms. Morning, Dad, she said, sounding surprised to find him there. No work today? No work today, he confirmed, pushing aside the folder. How are you feeling? Better. Doctor says I can go back to swimming next week. Emma grabbed a bowl from the cabinet and poured herself some cereal. So you're really doing it? Taking time off. Martin nodded. I'm really doing it. Emma sat across from him, studying his face as if looking for signs of deception. For how long? I don't know yet. As long as it takes. As long as what takes? Martin considered his answer carefully. As long as it takes to figure out what matters. Emma seemed to accept this, focusing on her cereal. After a few bites, she said, there's a swim meet next Saturday. Not a big one, just a friendly competition with Lakeside Academy. You could come, if you want. I'll be there, Martin promised immediately. Mom always sits in the third row, right side. Says it's the best view. Martin nodded, making a mental note. Third row, right side. These were the details of his daughter's life he should have known years ago. They ate in companionable silence for a while before Emma spoke again. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you work so much? I mean, I know you wanted to make money and stuff, but we already had plenty, right? Even before Wheeler Financial got so big. The question caught Martin off guard. He'd expected recriminations, not curiosity. It's complicated, he began, then stopped himself. That was the easy way out. Actually, no, it's not that complicated. At first, it was about providing for you and your mom, building something secure. But somewhere along the way, it became about the challenge, about proving I could do it, about proving I wasn't like my own father. Emma looked up. What do you mean? Martin realized he'd never talked to his daughter about his childhood. Another failure to add to the list. My father, your grandfather, was in and out of our lives when I was growing up. He had big dreams, but no follow-through. He'd disappear for months, come back with grand plans about businesses he was going to start, then leave again when things got tough. Martin traced the rim of his coffee mug. We never knew if we'd make rent from month to month. My mother worked 3 jobs sometimes. I didn't know that, Emma said quietly. I never wanted you or your mother to feel that uncertainty. I wanted to build something solid, dependable. Martin gave a humorless laugh. Ironic, isn't it? I became so fixated on not being absent like him that I ended up absent in a different way. Emma considered this. You know, there's a girl on my swim team, Lily Sanderson. Her dad's never been to a single meet. Not one. At least you came to some of mine. Martin winced. That's a pretty low bar, Emma. I know. I'm just saying. She shrugged. It could have been worse. The kitchen door swung open, and Rachel entered, already dressed for her job at the Boston Public Library. She paused when she saw them together. Good morning, she said, her tone polite but distant. Mom, Dad was just telling me about Grandpa Wheeler. Rachel raised an eyebrow. Was he now? She moved to the coffee pot. Did he tell you about the time his father showed up at his college graduation with a new family no one knew about? Rachel, Martin warned. What? It's part of the story, isn't it? Rachel poured her coffee into a travel mug. Emma should know where she comes from. Emma looked between her parents. You had a step-family I never met. Martin sighed. Not exactly. My father had remarried without telling us and had 2 kids with his new wife. I met them exactly once at graduation. Never saw them again after that. So I have an uncle and aunt somewhere? Half uncle and half aunt, Rachel corrected. Nathan and Olivia, I believe their names were. Martin stared at her. How do you remember that? I barely remember it myself. You talked about them. Early in our marriage, when you'd had too much wine. Rachel snapped the lid on her travel mug. You were going to look them up, remember? Find out what happened to them. But then Wheeler Financial took off, and well, she let the sentence hang. Martin did remember now. Early in their marriage, during quiet moments, he'd shared things with Rachel he'd never told anyone else. Dreams, fears, regrets. When had they stopped having those conversations? Nathan and Olivia Wheeler, Emma said thoughtfully. Have you ever tried to find them online? No, Martin admitted. I don't even know if they kept the Wheeler name. We could look, Emma suggested, a hint of excitement in her voice. They'd be, what, in their 30s now? Martin glanced at Rachel, who gave a small shrug as if to say, this is your mess. We could, he agreed cautiously, but I wouldn't get your hopes up. It was a long time ago. Emma was already pulling out her phone. What was your dad's name? My grandfather. Harold. Harold Wheeler. A name Martin hadn't spoken aloud in years. Emma typed quickly. And your stepmom? Martin shook his head. I don't remember. It was just that one meeting, and I wasn't exactly in a welcoming mood. Her name was Vivian, Rachel said quietly. Vivian Ashton before she married Harold. Martin looked at her in amazement. How could you possibly remember that? Rachel met his eyes directly for the first time in days. Because it mattered to you once. The simple statement hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. There had been a time when Martin had shared his pain with Rachel, and she had held on to it for him, keeping the details safe even when he'd forgotten them. Emma, oblivious to the moment between her parents, was scrolling through her search results. I don't see anything obvious. But maybe if we tried one of those people finder websites. Maybe. Martin cleared his throat. But let's save that for another day, okay? I actually thought we might do something together today, the 3 of us. Rachel frowned. I have work, Martin. Colin's sick, he suggested. Just this once. Some of us can't just walk away from our responsibilities whenever we feel like it, Rachel said, the warmth that had briefly appeared now gone from her voice. Mom, Emma interjected. Please? We haven't done anything together in forever. Rachel looked at her daughter, then back at Martin. What did you have in mind? I thought we could drive out to Rockport. Remember that little seafood place on the harbor? The one with the ridiculous lobster traps hanging from the ceiling. A flicker of something, recognition, maybe even nostalgia, crossed Rachel's face. Roy's Anchor. We used to go there before Emma was born. Martin nodded. They still make that clam chowder you loved. You remembered that? Rachel sounded genuinely surprised. I remember a lot of things, Rachel. Just because I wasn't present doesn't mean I wasn't paying attention. As soon as the words left his mouth, Martin recognized their inherent contradiction. Rachel seemed to be weighing her options. Finally, she sighed. Let me call the library. Roy's anchor hadn't changed in 20 years. The same weathered fishing nets draped across the ceiling, the same collection of antique buoys lining the walls, even the same red and white checkered tablecloths. Martin found it oddly comforting as they settled into a corner table overlooking the harbor. Emma sat between her parents, her eyes darting from one to the other as if monitoring an invisible fault line. She'd been uncharacteristically quiet during the hour-long drive from Boston, but her expression had brightened when they'd pulled into the small coastal town. "This place is so Instagram-worthy," she said, snapping a photo of the harbor view with her phone. "Why didn't we ever come here when I was little?" The question hung awkwardly in the air. Martin glanced at Rachel, who was studying the menu with unusual intensity. "We meant to," he said finally. "We always talked about bringing you here, but your father's schedule was always too busy," Rachel finished for him, her voice matter-of-fact rather than accusatory. Martin didn't argue the point. It was true. Their server, a college-age girl with a neat braid and a name tag reading Abby, arrived to take their orders. Martin and Rachel both chose the clam chowder without looking at the menu, a small sink that seemed to surprise them both. After Abby left, Emma leaned forward. "So what's the deal with Grandpa Wheeler and his secret family? Were they like the evil stepmother and step-siblings from Cinderella?" Rachel laughed softly. "No, nothing like that. Vivian seemed perfectly nice the one time I met her. It was at your father's business school graduation party." Martin raised an eyebrow. "I don't remember you meeting her." "You were busy networking," Rachel said with a small smile. "Vivian and I ended up talking by the punch bowl for nearly an hour. She was trying to make peace, I think. Said Harold had made many mistakes, but was trying to do better." "And did he?" Emma asked. "Do better?" Martin snorted. "No. He showed up twice more after that. Once when I opened my first office, and once when you were born. Each time with big promises about being part of our lives. Each time disappearing again within weeks." "What happened to him?" Emma asked. Martin and Rachel exchanged glances. "He passed away," Martin said. "About 10 years ago. Heart attack in Florida." "And you didn't tell me? We didn't go to the funeral?" "There wasn't one, as far as I know." Martin's voice was flat. "I got a call from a hospital administrator. Apparently, I was still listed as his emergency contact. By the time I found out, he had already been cremated. No service." Emma frowned. "That's sad." "It is," Rachel agreed softly, surprising Martin with the empathy in her voice. Their food arrived, steaming bowls of chowder and a basket of freshly baked bread. They ate in silence for a few minutes, the rhythmic sound of boats knocking against the dock outside providing a soothing backdrop. "Did you ever regret it?" Emma asked suddenly, looking at her father. "Working so much? Missing stuff?" Martin set down his spoon, considering the question. The easy answer would be an immediate yes, but his daughter deserved better than easy answers. "I didn't, for a long time," he admitted. "I told myself what I was doing was necessary, important, that I was building something that would last." He glanced at Rachel. "It wasn't until your mother called me during the storm that I realized what I'd lost while I was busy building." Rachel's face remained carefully neutral, but he could see something shift in her eyes. Not forgiveness, but perhaps recognition. "So what now?" Emma pressed. "You're just going to quit your job? Become a stay-at-home dad at 17? That's kind of late, don't you think?" There was an edge to her voice that Martin hadn't heard before. Behind her questions, he sensed anger, not the typical teenage rebellion, but something deeper, a hurt that had been festering for years. "I'm not quitting," Martin clarified, "but I am making changes. I've promoted Diane to COO, and I'm restructuring my role to focus on strategy rather than day-to-day operations." "And this is supposed to fix everything?" Emma's voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby tables. "You think you can just waltz back into our lives like nothing happened?" Rachel placed a hand on Emma's arm. "Emma, this isn't the place." "When is the place, Mom?" Emma pulled her arm away. "We're finally all together for once, so let's talk. Let's really talk." She turned back to Martin. "Do you know what it was like? Having to tell my friends that my dad couldn't come to career day because he was too important? Or watching Mom sitting alone at parent-teacher conferences year after year?" Martin felt each word like a physical blow. "Emma, you weren't there," she continued, her voice thick with emotion. "When I broke my arm in 6th grade, when I had my first swim meet, When I had my heart broken by Jason Phillips in ninth grade. Tears welled in her eyes. Mom had to handle everything. Everything. And now you want to play happy family like you didn't miss the last decade of my life. Rachel reached for Emma's hand again, but this time in solidarity, not restraint. It's okay to be angry, Emma. You're allowed to feel what you feel. Martin looked between his wife and daughter, seeing for the first time the unbreakable bond that had formed between them. Not just the natural mother-daughter relationship, but something forged in his absence, tempered by shared disappointments and mutual reliance. You're right to be angry, he said finally. I failed you both. I can't change that. I can't get back the time I lost. He took a deep breath. But I'm here now, asking for a chance to do better. Not to undo the past, but to be present for whatever future we might have. Emma wiped at her eyes with her napkin. And what if it's too late? What if Mom doesn't want you back? What if I don't? The question struck at Martin's deepest fear. Rachel cleared her throat. Emma, whatever happens between your father and me, he will always be your father. That doesn't change. But everything else will, Emma said. Where will I live? Will I have to split holidays? Choose sides. No, Martin and Rachel said simultaneously, then looked at each other in surprise. Whatever we decide, Rachel continued, we'll make sure it disrupts your life as little as possible. Emma laughed bitterly. My life's already disrupted. Has been for years. She pushed back from the table. I need some air. They watched as she walked out to the deck overlooking the harbor, her shoulders hunched against the cool coastal breeze. She's right, you know, Rachel said once Emma was out of earshot. About all of it. I know. Martin stared down at his half-eaten chowder. I really thought I was doing the right thing, Rachel. Building a legacy for her, for us. I know you did. Rachel's voice softened slightly. That's what makes it all so tragic, Martin. You sacrificed your family for what you thought your family needed. He looked up, meeting her gaze directly. For the first time in years, he saw her, really saw her. The fine lines at the corners of her eyes that hadn't been there when they'd first fallen in love. The streak of gray at her temple that she didn't bother to dye. The steady strength that had allowed her to raise their daughter largely alone while maintaining a career of her own. I still love you, he said simply. I never stopped. Rachel's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Pain, regret, or perhaps just acknowledgement. Sometimes love isn't enough, Martin. The week following their trip to Rockport passed in tense silence. Martin continued his leave of absence, working remotely when necessary and making sure to be home for dinner each night. Rachel maintained her polite distance, neither encouraging nor discouraging his presence. Emma oscillated between cautious engagement and sullen withdrawal, testing the waters of this new family dynamic. Martin was in the kitchen making coffee when his phone rang early Saturday morning. The caller ID showed Diane Shun, his assistant turned COO. Martin, she said without preamble, there's a situation. Berkshire Capital is threatening to pull their investment. Martin's stomach dropped. Berkshire's funding represented nearly 30% of their operating capital. Why? The quarterly numbers were solid. It's not about the numbers. Robert Vaughn heard about your leave of absence and got nervous. Started asking questions about succession planning, executive stability. Diane's voice was tense. They want a meeting. Today. With you specifically. Martin glanced at the kitchen clock. 7:15 a.m. Emma's swim meet started at 10 o'clock. I can't do it today, Diane. I promised Emma. Martin. Diane rarely interrupted him. They're talking about withdrawing $50 million by Monday if they don't get this meeting. The board is in panic mode. Martin closed his eyes, feeling the familiar tug of competing priorities. Just a month ago, he would have immediately canceled any personal plans, rushed to the office, done whatever was necessary to save the deal. But now, can you set it up for 2 p.m., he asked. At the office? The swim meet will be over by then, Emma said from behind him. Martin turned to find his daughter standing in the doorway, already dressed in her team warm-ups, her swim bag slung over her shoulder. Emma, it's fine, she said with forced casualness. I heard. Big important meeting. Millions of dollars at stake. I get it. Diane was still talking in his ear. I'll try, but Vaughn wants this morning. He's flying to London this afternoon. Martin raised a finger, asking Emma to wait. Diane, I need you to push for the afternoon. Tell Vaughn I have a personal commitment that cannot be moved. Martin, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. For the first time in years. Martin's voice was firm. 2 o'clock is my best offer. If Vaughn can't make it work, set up a video call for tonight. He ended the call before Diane could argue further, turning back to Emma, who was watching him with open surprise. You're still coming? She asked, disbelief evident in her voice. I promised I would. Martin set down his coffee mug. 3rd row, right side, wasn't it? A small smile tugged at the corner of Emma's mouth. Yeah. Rachel appeared in the doorway, car keys in hand. Ready to go, Emma? She nodded a greeting to Martin. There's bagels in the pantry if you want breakfast. Actually, Martin said, I thought I'd drive Emma to the meet. If that's okay with both of you. Emma glanced between her parents. That would be cool, she said after a moment. Mom always plays these super old playlists on the way. It's embarrassing. Excuse me, Rachel said with mock indignation. But Fleetwood Mac is classic, not old. Whatever helps you sleep at night, Mom. Emma rolled her eyes, but her tone was affectionate. Rachel handed Martin the keys. I'll meet you there. I need to stop by the library first to pick up some paperwork. The casual domesticity of the moment, this small family negotiation, felt both foreign and achingly familiar to Martin. On the drive to Riverside Prep, Emma connected her phone to the car's sound system, filling the space with music Martin didn't recognize but tried to appreciate. Between songs, they talked, really talked, about her swimming. She specialized in freestyle and butterfly, her college aspirations, still marine biology, with MIT and UC San Diego as top choices, and her friends. Leah was still her best friend, but there was some drama with the new girl, Zoe, who had transferred from California. By the time they arrived at the school's aquatic center, Martin knew more about his daughter's life than he had in years. The realization was both wonderful and painful. The swim meet was everything Martin had been missing. The chlorine-scented air, the echoing cheers, the nervous energy of parents clutching coffee cups and team banners. He found a seat in the 3rd row, right side, just as Emma had instructed. Rachel joined him just before the first event, offering a small nod of acknowledgement as she sat down. When Emma's name was announced for the 200-meter freestyle, Martin found himself on his feet, cheering louder than anyone. She glanced up at the stands before taking her position, her eyes finding his. He gave her a thumbs up. She grinned, then turned to focus on the race. Emma placed 2nd, missing 1st by less than half a second. Martin couldn't have been prouder if she'd broken a world record. She's gotten so fast, he marveled to Rachel between events. She practices 2 hours every morning before school, Rachel replied. Plus afternoons 3 times a week. Every morning? How did I not know that? Rachel gave him a look that said the answer was obvious. You're usually gone before she wakes up and home after she's in bed. Martin winced. Right. The meet continued, with Emma competing in 3 more events, winning her butterfly race decisively. After the final relay, which Riverside won, setting a new school record, Martin and Rachel waited in the lobby for Emma to emerge from the locker room. Martin's phone buzzed. A text from Diane. Vaughn agreed to 2 p.m. but insists on in person. Conference room A. Sending briefing materials to your email. He was typing a quick acknowledgement when Rachel spoke. Work? Yes, he admitted. I have a meeting at 2, but I'll be there for the whole meet, just like I promised. Rachel studied him for a moment. You know, I had a bet with myself about whether you'd make it through the entire meet without getting called away. Who won? Jury's still out, she said with a small smile. But I'm cautiously optimistic. Emma emerged from the locker room, her hair still damp, grinning and surrounded by teammates. She spotted her parents and broke away, jogging over to them. Did you see that butterfly finish? Coach says it was my best time ever. You were amazing, Martin said, resisting the urge to hug her, unsure if she'd welcome the gesture in front of her friends. Emma surprised him by throwing her arms around him. Thanks for coming, Dad. Martin held her tight, breathing in the scent of chlorine and shampoo, feeling a lump form in his throat. Wouldn't have missed it for anything. Over Emma's shoulder, he caught Rachel watching them, an unreadable expression on her face. The drive home was filled with Emma's excited recounting of every race, every turn, every competitor's strategy. Martin listened intently, asking questions, absorbing the details of this part of his daughter's life he'd been missing. When they arrived home, he checked his watch, 12:30. Just enough time to review Diane's materials before heading to the office. I have to go to a meeting, he told Emma as they entered the house. But I was thinking we could celebrate your wins tonight. Dinner anywhere you'd like. Emma considered this. Could we just order pizza and watch a movie here? All three of us. The simplicity of the request caught Martin off guard. Of course, if your mom's okay with it. I'm okay with it, Rachel said, coming in behind them. But I get to pick the movie. I've seen enough Marvel films to last a lifetime. Emma groaned. Fine, but nothing with subtitles. Martin watched their familiar negotiation with a sense of wonder. These were the everyday moments he'd sacrificed for boardrooms and business deals. The small, ordinary interactions that, he now realized, were anything but ordinary. His phone buzzed again. Diane, again, Berkshire lawyers requesting additional documentation. Can you come in at 1 instead of 2? Martin looked at the text, then at his wife and daughter as they continued their good-natured bickering about movie choices. For the first time in his career, the decision wasn't difficult. No, he typed back. I'll be there at 2 as agreed. He put his phone away and joined the conversation about movies, offering his own suggestion, a classic comedy they'd all enjoyed years ago on a rare family movie night. Oh my God, Dad, Emma laughed. That movie is so old. Like, from the 2000s or something. Hey, Martin protested. The 2000s were not that long ago. Rachel caught his eye across the kitchen island, a half-smile playing on her lips. Actually, Martin, they kind of were. The warmth in her gaze, however brief, gave him hope that perhaps not everything was lost. The Berkshire Capital meeting had been brutal. For 2 hours, Martin had faced the stern skepticism of Robert Vaughn and his team of advisors, all questioning whether Wheeler Financial could survive its founder's apparent change of priorities. Martin had maintained his composure, presented a clear succession plan, and outlined his new role within the company. By the end, Vaughn had agreed to maintain their investment, though with increased oversight. It was a win, but one that might have cost him in the past. Today, all Martin felt was relief that he'd be home in time for pizza and movies with his family. As he packed up his briefcase, Diane lingered in the conference room doorway. You did well, she said. I was worried when you insisted on the later meeting time, but it worked out. Martin nodded. Thanks for handling everything these past few weeks. I know it's been a lot. Diane hesitated, then said, Can I speak frankly? Always. You seem different. She tilted her head, studying him. Happier, maybe? Even with everything that's happening at home. Martin considered this. Not happier. More present. Like I've been sleepwalking for years and finally woke up. Diane smiled. Well, whatever it is, it suits you. She nodded toward his briefcase. And don't worry about coming in tomorrow. The Berkshire situation is handled, and everything else can wait until Monday. You sure? I'm sure. Go be with your family, Martin. The word family no longer felt like a distant concept, but something tangible, immediate. Something he was actively fighting for. Martin arrived home to find Emma and Rachel already in the living room, an array of pizza boxes spread on the coffee table. The sight was so wonderfully normal that he paused in the doorway, taking it in. How was the meeting? Rachel asked, looking up from where she was pouring drinks. Good. We kept the investment. Martin set down his briefcase and loosened his tie. But more importantly, I have the entire weekend free. Emma perked up from her spot on the couch. Seriously? No emergencies, no conference calls. None, Martin confirmed, taking a seat beside her. I am officially off the clock until Monday morning. The pizza was eaten, the movie watched. They'd compromised on a recent release that was neither Marvel nor subtitled, and laughter, genuine laughter, had filled the living room for the first time in years. By the time the credits rolled, Emma was yawning. I'm heading to bed, she announced. I'm meeting Leah for breakfast tomorrow before we go shopping. Martin checked his watch, not even 10 o'clock. So early. Emma rolled her eyes. Some of us still have social lives, Dad. She gave her mother a quick hug, then hesitated before offering Martin one as well. He held her a moment longer than usual, still marveling at how quickly she'd grown up when he wasn't looking. After Emma went upstairs, an awkward silence fell between Martin and Rachel. They began cleaning up simultaneously, moving around each other in the kitchen with the careful choreography of people who once knew each other intimately but were now uncertain of the boundaries. Thank you, Rachel said suddenly as she rinsed a glass, for being there today. For Emma's meet. It meant a lot to her. It meant a lot to me too. Martin leaned against the counter. I've missed so much, Rachel. She nodded. not disagreeing. You have. I want to try to make it right. Rachel turned off the water and faced him. Martin, I need to be clear about something. I'm glad you're making an effort with Emma. She needs her father, and I've always wanted you to be more present in her life. She took a deep breath. But as for us, our marriage, I'm not sure it can be fixed. The words hurt, but they weren't unexpected. I understand. Do you? Rachel's voice was gentle but firm. Because I need you to understand that this isn't a test you can pass by showing up for a few weeks or months. This isn't about proving yourself to me. Then what is it about? It's about the fact that people change, Rachel said. I've changed. I've had to become completely self-sufficient. I've built a life that works without you in it, because I had to. Martin absorbed this. And there's no room for me in that life? I don't know, Rachel admitted. That's the honest answer. I just don't know. She moved past him toward the stairs, then paused. I have a 6 o'clock shift at the library tomorrow morning. Early inventory day. I'll be up, Martin said. I'll make coffee before you go. Rachel looked surprised, then nodded. Good night, Martin. Martin stayed downstairs long after Rachel had gone to bed, sitting in the darkened living room, thinking about everything he'd nearly lost, everything he might still lose. Around midnight, he heard a noise from the kitchen and found Emma rummaging in the refrigerator. Midnight snack, he asked. She startled slightly. Geez, Dad. Creepy much. But she smiled as she said it. Just getting some water. What are you still doing up? Thinking. Sounds dangerous. Emma retrieved a bottle of water and leaned against the counter. In her baggy t-shirt and sleep shorts, she looked younger than her 17 years. Can I ask you something? Martin said. Sure. Do you think your mom will ever forgive me? Emma considered the question with surprising seriousness. I don't know if it's about forgiveness, Dad. I think it's more about whether she can trust you again. And what about you? Can you trust me? Emma took a long drink of water before answering. I'm still deciding. I want to. She shrugged. But actions speak louder than words and all that, right? Martin nodded, struck by his daughter's maturity. Right. Anyway, Emma said, heading back toward the stairs. Don't stay up too late having your midlife crisis or whatever. I was thinking maybe we could go to the public garden tomorrow afternoon. If you're free. I'd like that, Martin said, his throat unexpectedly tight. Cool. Night, Dad. Good night, Emma. True to his word, Martin was up before dawn the next morning, brewing coffee and preparing a simple breakfast. When Rachel came downstairs at 5:30, dressed for work, she stopped short at the sight of the kitchen table. You didn't have to do this, she said. I wanted to. Martin poured her coffee into a travel mug, black with just a dash of cinnamon, the way she'd always taken it. I remember some things, you know. Rachel accepted the mug with a small smile. Apparently, they ate in companionable silence, the early morning light gradually filling the kitchen. It reminded Martin of their early years together, when they'd often shared quiet mornings before the demands of the day pulled them in different directions. I've been thinking, he said as Rachel gathered her things to leave, about what you said last night, about having built a life without me. Rachel paused. And I think maybe we should start over. She raised an eyebrow. Start over? Not pretend the past didn't happen, Martin clarified. But maybe get to know each other again. The people we are now, not the people we were when we met. Rachel considered this, head tilted slightly. What exactly are you suggesting, Martin? Would you have dinner with me next Friday night? He asked. Not as my wife, but as Rachel Mitchell, the woman who loves literature and martial arts movies and has a secret passion for terrible reality TV shows. A surprised laugh escaped her. You know about my reality TV habit? Emma might have mentioned it. Martin smiled. So, dinner? I promised to leave the business magnate at home and just bring Martin Wheeler, the guy who's still figuring out who he is without his job defining him. Rachel studied him for a long moment. I'll think about it, she said finally, but there was a softness in her expression that gave him hope. After she left, Martin made himself another cup of coffee and took it out to the small patio behind their brownstone. The sun was just clearing the horizon, painting the city skyline in shades of gold and pink. It was a view he'd rarely taken the time to appreciate, always too busy checking email or making calls to notice the quiet beauty of a Boston sunrise. He heard movement behind him and turned to see Emma, still in her pajamas, hair tousled from sleep. You're up early, he said, surprised. Weird dream woke me up. She grabbed a chair and sat beside him, pulling her knees up to her chest. Plus, I smelled coffee. Martin offered her his mug. She took a sip and made a face. Ugh, how can you drink it black? Acquired taste, he said, taking it back. Like classical music and vegetables. Whatever, old man. But she was smiling as she said it. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky brighten. After a while, Emma said, I found something yesterday, when I was looking for that movie. Oh. She pulled her phone from her pocket and showed him a social media profile. I think this might be your half-sister. Olivia Wheeler-Pearson. Lives in Chicago. She's a pediatrician. Martin stared at the photo of a woman in her 30s, with dark hair and a warm smile. There was something familiar about her eyes, his father's eyes. How did you find her? I'm 17, Dad. Finding people online is, like, the one thing my generation is really good at. Martin zoomed in on the photo, taking in the details of his half-sister's face. I wonder if she even remembers me. Only one way to find out. Emma took the phone back, hesitated, then sent a friend request. Oops, my finger slipped. Emma. Martin stared at her in shock. You can't just, already did. She grinned, unrepentant. Sometimes you need a little push, Dad. I'm just helping. Before Martin could respond, his phone rang. Diane's name flashed on the screen. Emma's smile faded. You should probably get that. Martin looked at the phone, then at his daughter's resigned expression. Then he did something he'd never done before. He declined the call. It can wait, he said, turning the phone off completely. Right now, I'm having breakfast with my daughter. Emma's smile returned, brighter than before. Cool. But you know we don't actually have any breakfast out here, right? Martin laughed. Then let's make some. I seem to remember being pretty good at pancakes once upon a time. Mom says you used to. Make them in funny shapes. I did. My specialty was dinosaurs, though they usually ended up looking more like blobs with tails. Emma stood, offering him her hand to pull him up. Show me. Martin took her hand, feeling the fragile trust being offered along with it. I'd love to. As they headed inside together, Martin made a silent promise, not just to Emma or to Rachel, but to himself as well. This time, he would get it right. This time, he would be present for all the small moments that, he now understood, were actually the big ones. The sun continued its ascent over Boston, marking the start of a new day and perhaps a new beginning.